Hi again. Kenneth Scott Latourette, page 246 of A History of Christianity, discussing now the Christian attitude towards property and Christian philanthropy in the early church. Could a man of wealth become and remain a Christian? Did the Christian ethic make for a revolution in the attitude towards property and the industrial and commercial structure of life? Some passages in the New Testament brought disquiet to tender consciences. Notable was the statement of Jesus to the rich young ruler that if he would be perfect, he must sell all that he had and give to the poor, and his further comment that it was extremely difficult for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven. As we have seen, the early church in Jerusalem for a time practiced community of goods. With some partial exceptions, poverty was one of the rules for those who sought to be fully Christian by following the way of the monk. The Christian teachers tended to regard agriculture, manual labor, as preferable to trade and frowned upon the latter for those of their faith. Clement of Alexandria did not prescribe trade, but said that the Christian merchant should seek to determine what would be a just price to ask for his wares and to demand no more and accept no less. Yet Christian teachers did not forbid private property. They held that luxury was contrary to Christian principles and commended simplicity in clothing and in eating and in drinking, but they also enjoined labor and did not require the full surrender of the fruits of labor. The church became the owner of large estates, and even monasteries possessed property collectively and sold on the market the products of the work of the monks. Now, under Christian philanthropy, gifts of individuals to the public weal were not a Christian innovation. Many non-Christians had been very generous. Indeed, in the Roman Empire, benefactions by private individuals and public officials were a commonplace. Through them, baths, temples, theaters, roads, bridges, aqueducts, markets, schools, and libraries were constructed, and games and other public amusements were provided. However, in the use of money for the general welfare, Christianity brought 5 significant innovations. It made giving the obligation of its adherents, poor as well as rich, for it was held that all should contribute, each according to his ability, and this was symbolized by the collection, which was early part of the Eucharistic ritual. The motive that was stressed was also new. It was love in grateful response to the love of Christ, who, though he was rich, yet for the sake of those who were to follow him became poor, that they, through his poverty, might become rich. The objects of beneficence were also changed, at least in part. The Christian community stressed the support of its widows, orphans, sick, and disabled, and of those who, because of their faith, were thrown out of employment or were imprisoned. It ransomed many who were put to servile labor for their faith. It entertained travelers. One church would send aid to another church whose members were suffering from famine or persecution. In theory, and to no small degree in practice, the Christian community was a brotherhood, bound together in love, in which reciprocal material help was the rule. This was more easily carried out in the years when Christians were a minority, but something of the same spirit, even though attenuated and institutionalized, carried over into the days when Christians became a majority. Christian love and service were not restricted to members of the church. They were also extended to non-Christians. The command to love one's neighbor was not forgotten, nor the parable by which Jesus had illustrated that command of care for a nameless stranger upon whom misfortune had fallen. In one of the New Testament writings, Christians were enjoined, as they had opportunity, to do good to all men. We read that later, when pestilence swept great cities such as Carthage and Alexandria, and when the pagans had fled to escape it, Christians remained and cared for the sick and dying. After persecution ceased, wealthy Christians founded hospitals. We must note that, as a 5th innovation, Christian giving was personalized. Springing as it did from love, it was not impersonal service to masses of men, although often, as in times of famine, it dealt with large numbers, but it poured out itself to individuals, valuing each as having distinct worth in the sight of God, one for whom Christ died. I'll put in a link to one of our early videos on Martin Hengel's wonderful work, and this particular video is entitled Property, Land, and Equality in Ancient Israel. Bye for now.